Oh yeah, Disney and its crazy characters.
I'd like a word with you, if you don't mind.
Shere Khan.
What's going on?
A pouncing lesson.
Oh, very good. Pouncing. Pouncing?
Try everything. I'm Gazelle. Welcome to Zootopia.
Don't you think they really are the ones responsible for furries being a thing right now? Hi everyone, this is Sally the Fox. Welcome to a new video. Me saco esto, da un toque. We've all heard it before, people blaming cartoons and video games somehow for turning kids into furries.
That's no good.
But what if I told you that the real guilty ones was neither Disney nor these games? What if the reason we relate to anthropomorphic animals actually comes from something much older? Something we all grew up with? Schools. Yeah, that's right. Schools might just be the real reason so many of us became furries. So let's talk about it in more detail. Think back to the first books you read in schools. What do you remember? Maybe it was The Tale of Peter Rabbit or The Wind in the Willows. Maybe it was Charlotte's Web or Watership Down. Do you notice a pattern? They all start talking animals. But this isn't just a coincidence. Schools have been using anthropomorphic animals to teach kids for centuries. In reality, books for children weren't just about entertainment. They were meant to educate, instill discipline, and teach kids moral values. The other day, I was planning one of my literature classes, and I realized this crazy thing. During summer, I found a book by Tess Coslett, Talking Animals in British Children Fiction. And something suddenly clicked. It was then that it dawned on me that authors like John Newbery and Letitia Borbold fill their books with wise, talking creatures to help children understand the world around them. Take, for example, Woody Two Shoes, one of the earliest children books. Even if it only featured animals as companions and moral guides instead of actual anthropomorphic characters, we get the lesson that these creatures are there to help and are not meant to be mistreated. Though, even if they talk, they kinda were anthropomorphic in a way. Anyways, there was a raven, if you remember. Its name was Rolf, and that raven literally taught kids how to read. This wasn't just about making stories more fun. It was about making kids absorb lessons without even realizing it. Not only taking care of animals, but also the value that they have in the world and nature itself. And now I ask you, do you see what's going on here? The idea that animals can talk, learn, and teach us things was embedded in us from the moment we start reading. This means that long before we ever saw an animated fox in a movie steal something or a blue dog in a story helping a person, we were already being conditioned to accept and relate to anthropomorphic animals. Schools set us for this fascination and they didn't even realize it. But it goes deeper than that. Schools didn't just introduce us to talking animals, they used them to teach us how to be a good person. Think about the kinds of stories you read as a kid. Fables, fairy tales, moral lessons basically. Whether it was Aesop's fables, The Fox and the Crow, or The Ugly Duckling, these stories always had the same idea. Animals behaving like humans, making mistakes, and teaching us a valuable lesson. This wasn't new. Even in the 18th and 19th centuries, moralists like Trimmer and Borbold used animal stories to instill religious and ethical lessons in children. Books like The Peacock at Home weren't just cute. They subtly taught lessons about vanity, social class, and even survival. Schools used these stories to teach empathy, because if you can feel bad for a little rabbit getting into trouble or a fox struggling to survive, you're learning to feel for others. This was a direct attempt to shape how kids thought about the world, an early form of emotional education if you look at it. And if you also think about it, what is the furry fandom if not a massive community built on empathy for others, our friends, and at the same time technically being animal characters? The idea that animals have emotions, personalities, and complex lives was something we absorbed from school. So when we got older and saw those same themes reflected in cartoons, movies, and eventually the furry fandom, it just made sense.
Copper, you're my very best friend.
Yeah, it's clear that we are here because of this, right? Anyways. And there is one more thing, something most people don't usually realize. These stories school taught us weren't just about animals, they were about what animals represented. See, a lot of these books weren't just fun stories about talking creatures, they were critiques of the world around us. This is something that I read in this book that I mentioned at the beginning, which is curious, and it's something that I will definitely teach in school when time comes. So be prepared if you're watching this. And The Wind in the Willows, Kenneth Grahame wasn't just writing about a mischievous toad. He was showing an idyllic countryside being threatened by industrialization. What about Beatrix Potter? She wasn't just drawing cute rabbits, she was rebelling against an era that dismissed women in science. Her books were deeply rooted in her knowledge of nature, but they also contained anti-urban, anti-industrial messages. Even Watership Down, a book that, well, let's be real, traumatized half of us, but wasn't just a bunny adventure. It was an allegory about displacement, survival, and resistance against oppressive forces. Schools taught us to see this contrast. They made us love the idea of untouched nature, of animal communities working together, of an existence free of human greed and destruction. So when we grew up and started forming our own identities, it's no surprise that so many of us gravitated towards a subculture that celebrates anthropomorphic animals. It wasn't just because we liked the art or being an animal, like, getting a fursuit and wearing it. It was because deep down, these stories shaped how we viewed the world. Nowadays, the furry fandom revolves around having fun, having friends, helping others, and if you see it in conventions, for example, donations and trying to build a better world are key elements of our community, which clearly reflects the moral lessons that we learned back in the day. But isn't this just because we learned it at school, or is this an ethical value we think it's good? That's a question I will leave you guys to discuss in the comments. So back to our original question, did schools make us furries? Well, maybe not directly, but they definitely planted the seed. From the very first books we read, we were taught to empathize with animals, to see them as moral guides, and even to view them as symbols of a better world. These weren't just stories, they were an entire framework for how we engaged with the world outside. Not only that, but also the Suggestopedia of the classroom. This is basically the decorations that we saw around. If you think about it, these items of decoration also included these animal creatures. At least here in Argentina, many classroom posters and welcome signs had animals going back to school or showing a certain code of conduct. So we also were imposed, or in a way forced, without actual force of course, to see animals in an anthropomorphic settings. And now, here we are, grown-up kids who still feel that connection. Grown-up kids. Dude, come on, you're almost 30. Whether it's in cartoons, art, or nowadays in the furry fandom itself, that bond between us and our animal counterparts is stronger than ever. So next time someone asks why furries exist, you just tell them to check their old school books. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to let me know in the comments what the first animal story you remember reading in school was. I hope you have enjoyed today's video, and I also hope to see you in the next one. Take good care of yourselves, everyone. Meow!
An unfortunate case.